What looks impossible is about to shift, and if you're still here, don't scroll, listen to this, because this message didn't find you by accident, it found you because your heart needs this right now, and somewhere deep inside you already know that the wall you've been staring at, the door that wouldn't open, the situation that refused to move, is not permanent, even if it has felt that way for a long time, and listen to this carefully. Impossibility is often just alignment happening slower than our fear can tolerate, and this message is for you, the one who has been doing everything right yet still waiting, praying, trying to understand why effort didn't equal outcome, why faith didn't equal relief, and don't scroll, because what you've been calling a delay has actually been protection, and your heart needs this right now because discouragement has been quietly whispering that maybe this is as good as it gets. Maybe this is where things stop, but hear this clearly, God never brings you this far just to leave you stuck, and listen to this, the reason the situation feels heavy is because it's reaching its breaking point, and pressure always builds right before a shift, and don't scroll, because the signs around you have been subtle but consistent, the repeated numbers like 111 showing up when you question your path, 333 appearing when you feel alone, 555 surfacing when change feels overdue, these are not coincidences, they are confirmations that movement has already begun. In the unseen, and your heart needs this right now because you've been judging progress by what you can see instead of what you can feel, and listen to this carefully, faith is not believing something will happen someday, it's trusting that something is already rearranging even when your circumstances haven't caught up yet, and don't scroll, because the impossible thing you're facing was never meant to break you, it was meant to stretch you into a version of yourself that could handle what's coming next, and your heart needs this right now because you've been underestimating how much you've grown in silence, how much strength you built while waiting, how much clarity you gained while things stood still, and listen to this, stagnation is an illusion when growth is happening internally, and don't scroll, because God often changes the person before he changes the situation, and your heart needs this right now because you're not the same person who first prayed for this shift, you're wiser, calmer, more discerning, less desperate, and that matters, and listen to this carefully, desperation blocks alignment, but readiness attracts it, and don't scroll, because readiness is what you've been cultivating without even realizing it, every boundary you held, every time you didn't settle, every time you chose patience over panic, that was preparation. And your heart needs this right now because impatience has been tempting you to force outcomes, to compromise your standards, to accept half answers just to feel movement, but hear this clearly, forced doors lead to fragile outcomes, and God is building something that lasts, and listen to this, the soulmate energy tied to your next chapter is not coming to save you from your life, they're coming to walk with you in it, and that's why timing matters so much, because both of you needed to arrive whole, not wounded and reaching, and don't scroll, because love that aligns with destiny feels steady, not urgent, peaceful, not chaotic, and your heart needs this right now because you've confused intensity with progress before, mistaking emotional highs for divine confirmation, but listen to this carefully, real shifts feel quiet at first, almost anticlimactic, because they happen beneath the surface before they show up in form, and don't scroll, because the universe has been responding to you differently lately, closing doors faster, revealing red flags sooner, removing distractions more efficiently, and that's not loss, that's refinement, and your heart needs this right now because refinement feels uncomfortable when you're used to struggle being your normal, but ease is not laziness, ease is alignment, and listen to this, the impossible situation you're facing is not asking you to push harder, it's asking you to trust deeper, and don't scroll, because trust doesn't mean doing nothing, it means doing the next right thing without demanding guarantees, and your heart needs this right now because control has been exhausting you, making you feel responsible for outcomes that were never yours to carry, and listen to this carefully, surrender is not giving up, it's handing over what you were never meant to manage alone, and don't scroll, because the shift you're waiting for will come through cooperation, not force, through alignment, not anxiety, and your heart needs this right now because anxiety makes you rush, but alignment invites patience. And listen to this, patience is not passive, it's powerful. It positions you to recognize the opportunity when it finally appears instead of missing it out of fear, and don't scroll, because fear has tried to convince you that if it hasn't happened yet, it never will, but hear this clearly, timing is not denial, and delays are not dead ends, and your heart needs this right now because the story you've been telling yourself about being behind, forgotten, overlooked, that story is ending. And listen to this carefully, what looks impossible from where you stand is often one decision away from movement, one conversation away from clarity, one release away from breakthrough. And don't scroll, because the universe is already nudging you toward that release, asking you to let go of how you think it should happen so it can show you how it will. And your heart needs this right now because expectation can blind you to better outcomes. And listen to this, God's solutions rarely match our plans, but they always exceed our fears. And don't scroll, because the next phase of your life will not begin with a dramatic announcement, it will begin with a subtle shift in how you respond, how you choose, how you trust. And your heart needs this right now because that shift has already started. You're calmer than you used to be, clearer than you were, less willing to chase what doesn't choose you back. And listen to this carefully, that is not coincidence, that is readiness. And don't scroll, because the impossible thing you're facing is about to meet a version of you that no longer negotiates with doubt. And your heart needs this right now because belief is no longer something you perform, it's something you live, quietly, steadily, consistently. And listen to this, when the shift happens, and it will, you won't feel shocked, you'll feel recognized, like something finally clicked into place. And don't scroll, because this moment right now is part of that alignment, the moment you choose to stay present instead of scrolling past your own confirmation. And your heart needs this right now because what looks impossible is not your enemy, it's the doorway, and you are closer than you think. There is a quiet moment that arrives before impossible things begin to move. It does not feel dramatic. It does not announce itself. It feels like stillness mixed with exhaustion, like the point where you have stopped asking for signs because you are too tired to hope the wrong way again. This is where you are now. Not because you gave up, but because something deeper in you decided to rest. And it is in this rest that the shift starts forming. You may have noticed that lately, the struggle has not been as loud as it used to be. The fear still exists, but it no longer controls every thought. The doubt still whispers, but it does not paralyze you the same way. This is not weakness. This is recalibration. When life prepares to move something heavy, it first reduces the noise so you can feel the direction. What looks impossible has been listening to you, not your words, but your endurance. There are doors that never open through force. They open through alignment. And alignment often looks like delay to the human mind. You were not being ignored. You were being positioned. Every time you thought, maybe this is not meant for me, something unseen adjusted the timing, the people, the conditions. The weight you carried was not meant to crush you, it was meant to mature you so that when the shift happens, you do not run from it out of fear. You are closer than you think, but closeness does not always feel like excitement. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like standing in the same place while everything inside you changes. That is what is happening now. The internal version of you is no longer compatible with the life that has been holding you back. And life has no choice but to respond to that change. Think about how many times you survived what should have broken you. Not barely survived, but learned something in the process. That learning was not accidental. Each experience stripped something false from you. False expectations. False timelines. False dependencies. What remains now is quieter, but stronger. This version of you does not beg. This version waits with certainty, even when the evidence is missing. The impossible situation you keep thinking about has already started to loosen. Not in ways you can see yet, but in ways that matter. Conversations are being delayed for a reason. Decisions are being postponed for your protection. Certain people are being removed gently so they do not interfere with what is coming. If everything moved at once, you would not recognize the miracle because you would still be looking for it to arrive the old way. There is a reason your intuition has been louder lately. A reason your dreams feel different. A reason old desires no longer excite you the same way. You are being invited into a larger vision, but first, your nervous system needs to feel safe enough to receive it. That is why the pause exists. That is why nothing seems to be rushing. The impossible does not rush. It waits until the foundation is ready. You may feel like you are behind, but you are not. You are right on time for the version of life that actually lasts. Temporary wins would have cost you permanent peace. So they were withheld. What is coming is not fragile. It will not require you to constantly prove your worth or fight to keep it. That is why it takes longer. Stability takes preparation. Pay attention to what no longer drains you the same way. Notice how certain triggers have lost their power. This is evidence of growth, not stagnation. You are becoming someone who can hold more without breaking. And when the shift happens, you will realize that the delay was not punishment. It was training. There are things aligning right now that you do not need to control. In fact, the more you try to force clarity, the more foggy it feels. This is intentional. You are being taught trust at a level deeper than logic. Not blind trust, but grounded trust. The kind that says, even if I do not see it yet, I know I am not forgotten. The impossible situation was never meant to stay impossible forever. It was meant to stretch your perception of what you deserve and what you can sustain. Soon, what felt heavy will feel obvious in hindsight. You will look back and understand why it could not happen sooner, why certain paths had to close, why you had to become this version of yourself first. For now, do not rush your healing. Do not compare your timeline. Do not assume silence means no. Sometimes silence means, wait, there is more being arranged than you realize. The shift does not announce itself loudly. It begins subtly, through internal peace, through clarity replacing urgency, through acceptance replacing fear. Stay present. Stay grounded. Stay open without forcing. What looks impossible is already responding to who you have become. And the moment it moves, it will move completely. There comes a point in every long season of waiting where the mind stops fighting and the soul starts listening, and that moment does not feel powerful at first, it feels quiet, almost unremarkable, like the day you wake up and realize you are no longer angry about what once consumed your thoughts, and this is where you are now, standing at the edge of a shift that does not need noise to be real, because what looks impossible does not change through effort alone, it changes when the inner version of you is finally stable enough to carry what is coming without losing yourself in it, and that stability has been forming slowly inside you, even on days when you thought nothing was happening at all, because the truth is that your life has been rearranging itself in subtle ways, your reactions have softened, your boundaries have strengthened, your patience has deepened, and these are not small changes. They are signs that you are no longer the person who would misuse the blessing you are asking for, which is why the impossible has started to lean toward you rather than away from you, even if the physical evidence has not arrived yet, because evidence always comes last, after alignment, after readiness, after the quiet internal decision that says, I trust myself enough now to receive more, and this decision may not have been spoken out loud, but it was made the moment you stopped chasing validation, the moment you stopped explaining your pain to people who could not hear you, the moment you chose rest over desperation, and that choice sent a signal into the unseen that you were no longer operating from lack, and lack is the only thing that keeps impossible situations frozen. You see, impossibility is not about circumstances, it is about timing and capacity, and your capacity has expanded far beyond what you realize, which is why old fears feel smaller, why old patterns no longer pull you back the same way, why the idea of settling now feels uncomfortable. Instead of safe, because your spirit knows it has outgrown the environment it has been surviving in, and survival is not the destination, it was only the preparation, and now preparation is ending, even if it does not look dramatic yet, because the shift you are approaching is not explosive, it is inevitable, it is the kind of change that happens once resistance is gone, once you stop needing proof to believe, once you stop asking when and start trusting how, and this is difficult because the human mind wants timelines, it wants guarantees, it wants signs that look obvious, But the kind of breakthrough you are walking toward does not announce itself with certainty first, it asks for faith grounded in self-respect, the kind that says, I will not abandon myself while I wait, and that is exactly what you have learned to do. Stay with yourself, even when things felt unfair, even when doors stayed closed longer than expected, even when answers did not come, you stayed, you adapted, you learned, and that endurance rewired you in ways that are now making room for something larger, something more aligned, something that does not require you to betray your values or shrink your needs, and this is why certain delays were necessary, because had things worked out earlier, you would have accepted less just to escape the discomfort. But now discomfort no longer scares you, and that alone changes everything. Because impossible situations feed on fear, they stay rigid when you are desperate, they soften when you are grounded, and you are grounded now, even on days when you feel tired, even on days when doubt visits, your foundation is different, you do not collapse the way you used to, you do not spiral the same way, you do not question your worth the way you once did, and that is not accidental. It is the result of every moment you kept going without reassurance, every moment you chose growth over bitterness, every moment you let go without knowing what would replace what you lost, and replacement is closer now than you think, not because you demanded it, but because you became someone who could hold it with care, and this is important, because what is coming is not meant to be chaotic, it is meant to be sustainable, it is meant to stay, and that requires a different level of inner maturity than you had before, which you now possess, even if you underestimate yourself. So when you look at the impossible situation today and feel less urgency, less panic, less obsession, that is not you giving up, that is you stepping into alignment, and alignment always precedes movement. The universe does not reward force, it responds to coherence, and your thoughts, emotions, and actions are becoming coherent, they are no longer fighting each other. And that harmony is what allows reality to rearrange itself without resistance, so do not misinterpret the calm as stagnation. Do not assume that because nothing has visibly changed yet, nothing is happening. Because the most permanent shifts begin invisibly, in places you cannot monitor or control, and soon, what felt stuck will begin to respond, not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, naturally, in ways that feel almost obvious in hindsight, and when that happens, you will understand that the impossible was never blocked, it was waiting for you to become someone who would not lose themselves when it finally moved.